11/28/25.
Your mother passed away when you were
2 weeks old.
2 weeks old, gosh.
Yeah. And my dad I was the 9th child. So his sister, which was DeForest Warren's grandmother, went to Pavilion and stayed out there 2 years and took care of the family. After 2 years, they needed to come back to Ivory to help DeForest's father on the farm. And at that time, my dad said, well, you've taken care of him that long, you might as well take him home with you. Yeah. So I ended up out here in Ivory School, 6th grades, and then Frewsburg, graduated in Frewsburg in 44. Got my draft notice when I was 18, and I was, that November, I was deferred to finish high school.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
But right about that time, that was another time I got farmed out to another uncle's farm. He was crippled, and there was a boy my age, and they needed help, so I got farmed out over there when I was probably 16, 15 to 16. And I remember being over there, and they apparently had already, the wars started, and the people said, well, you and my cousin, well, you boys will never have to go, you're too young. But we managed to get there. Well, I had a buddy, Dutch Fenton from Ivory. Unfortunately, he died 30-some years ago. But he was a buddy of mine. He says, Bass, the system was you got called to Buffalo and took a physical. Then you had a month to come home and then go. But he says, Bass, if you volunteer for meeting induction, you get your choice, the Navy. He says, we'll be going to the Navy. So I listened to everything he said. But he said, if we don't get in the Navy, we'll volunteer for the paratroopers. I said, all right. Well, I was a little older than he was, so I went to Buffalo, volunteered for immediate induction, and Army, they didn't ask you. So by the time that Dutch came along, he got his choice. He ended up in the Navy. And by that time, I had volunteered for the paratroopers. So Dutch came along, he got his choice. He ended up in the Navy. And by that time, I had volunteered for the paratroopers. So he was a real buddy.
Yeah. Good advice, huh?
Yeah. I took my basic training at Camp Croft, South Carolina, about 16 weeks. Some rugged country. All the prisoner of wars I see was at Camp Croft. They had a big German camp there. And all them guys do is play soccer all day long.
Were you assigned to the paratroopers right from the beginning?
No. While I was there, I volunteered for the paratroopers. So when I finished, instead of coming home on furlough like most of them did and then shipped out, I was transferred to Fort Benning, Georgia. When we got to the airborne school, it was rougher. It was a little different. It was hard. Fortunately, if you could run, you could make it, because they run you all the time. It was 250-foot towers. They had them at the World's Fair. And they had a framework that held a parachute, was all hooked on rings, and you were in a harness, and they pushed the button, and you went straight up 250 foot. And you had the same size harness on as a 250-pound boy, and I weighed 165. So you hung right onto the straps. And then went up there at the top, you were ready, and they pushed you up, and it tripped and dropped you. And your parachute was automatically open, you drifted down. And that wasn't too bad. But the one that where a lot of boys decided they wouldn't, they had the, about a 28-foot tower. You go up there and put on the harness, and the harness was fast to a cable that run down, and they asked you to step off. And a lot of guys, not a lot, but a few. said that they weren't going to do it. Yeah, we did. And then we packed our own parachute. The first parachute we ever jumped, we packed it ourselves. And so we were real careful. And but after that, the wax passed them. There was 5 jumps, one at night, and most of them were not very high. Some of them were low because they jumped at a low elevation. Yeah. Well, you didn't free fall very long.
Yeah.
Because when you hooked up a strap and walked out the door, and that strap went out, and it got the end
Those automatics.
by twine to the back, pulled the back off and pulled out.
Right.
Yeah. We had one of the trooper boys that he always said he was cocky, and they said, well, you wouldn't dare not hook up. He said, I'll do it. One day after the sergeant had checked everybody hooked up, he unhooked and tucked it in, walked out the door.
Wow.
Yeah.
I trust he lived to talk about it.
Yeah. He got chewed out, but that's the kind of boys they wanted anyhow, you know?
Yeah.
Somebody with guts.
Yeah.
And then I volunteered for communication school, so I didn't come home and had 4 more jumps in advanced training. And by that time, the war was moving on.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin from CBS World News. President Roosevelt is dead.
I just can't believe that this is the last time that we shall be here to watch a procession in which Franklin Delano Roosevelt takes part. Nobody can believe it. It just doesn't seem possible.
From his beloved second home at Warm Springs, Georgia, the body of Franklin Delano Roosevelt moves on the first stages of its journey to his final resting place.
Yeah, I was fortunate. I stood honor guard. I was in Benning. He died in April at Warm Springs. So, the middle of the night, our outfit had to fall out, get dressed, and put us on a bus. And I think it was probably 30 miles to Warm Springs from Fort Benning. And we stood honor guard from Warm Springs, his home there in Warm Springs, to the railroad station while his body was moved and loaded in to the train.
Was that pretty emotional?
Well, it was a little, yeah. It was something, yeah.
It's not your normal, honor guard for just somebody who passed away, which is sad, but this is the president.
Yeah, the president, yeah. Yeah, it was something. Yeah, it was an honor.
Wow. Now that's something to talk about.
Yeah. We went by boat and went to the Philippines. Mm-hmm. I joined 11th Airborne, and they just came out of combat. They'd been in the battle of south of Manila, and we landed at Manila Bay, and we had to get off the boat with like a landing craft because the Japanese and Americans had totally devastated. Manila was a total devastation. I was strictly soldier, rifle soldier. My only small combat experience was in the Philippines, and I'd only been there a few days, and they sent me out with a few fellows at a camp outside. We were to guard a water line. They said the Japanese was still in the area, and I went out there, and they had a tent under a big mango tree. And it come night, the guys all laid down and went to sleep. I didn't sleep very good. My first night out there, and they said, well, there's still Japanese out there, But I don't know, them guys, they sleep. Later on, during the night, I hear something crunch, something was coming. Of course, I didn't know what halt was in Japanese. I didn't ask. So I had my M1. I let one round off, and then I heard, It was a dog.
Well, you got to guard yourself.
Yeah. So I needless to say, I was a little nervous that night. They moved us down on Leyte, the island Leyte. Well, we was there when they dropped the second bomb.
Right.
In 3 days, we were packed and we were flew to Okinawa. And we stayed in Okinawa for about 2 weeks while they settled a lot of the peace agreements. And then I think it was about the 1st of September, we flew into Atsugi, Japan, the same place that MacArthur, he landed at 1 o'clock, and the 11th Airborne, our group, was the first troops in Japan, and we landed there about 5 o'clock.
So right after MacArthur.
Yeah, same day.
At Atsugi Field, airborne troops are still flocking in. Within a few hours, the Tokyo area holds thousands of American soldiers. And now another plane wings low over Atsugi. Inside is the leader of the army that fought back from Bataan. The leader now of all the United Nations troops, ships, planes that smashed a terrible enemy. The Supreme Commander, Douglas MacArthur.
MacArthur had ordered every vehicle that the Japanese had that would run, leave it at the Atsugi airport, because back in those days we didn't have the facilities to bring in all the vehicles. So they asked for volunteers. You don't usually volunteer, but I and a buddy of mine from North Collins, we volunteered so to be truck drivers. And that wasn't my duty or anything. So we picked out an old truck, filled it up with aviation fuel, and we transported 11th Airborne to Yokosuka, Yokohama, anywhere that there was a building, like a library or a building that hadn't been burned up or blown up.
Right.
And while we were doing that, the 11th, no, it was the 1st Cavalry. They came up by boat, and they were the MPs and stuff. But the airborne boys were a little wild there for the first few days. We trucked the guys, and one day I said, well, let's go to Tokyo. So I loaded my squad into the truck, and we took off down to Tokyo, drove right up to the Imperial Palace to the moat. That's as far as we got. I took some pictures there, and so we decided, well, you can't get in there, so we go to the zoo. That hadn't been part of Tokyo. Was, you know, the government was smart enough; they didn't blow everything up. You know, driving the truck right down through Yokohama. You know, you probably knew that all that firebombing they had.
Right.
There was nothing but burnt tin, chimneys, and old safes. Everything was just devastated. In the meantime, we found a hand crank siren. So one of us, I don't know which one of them drove, and the other one was cranked this thing. We were right down through town. Of course, there was no traffic. We were driving on the wrong side of the road anyhow. And it was kind of wild. Yeah, they used to go to, what is it? Nickel dime dancing, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And with the Koreans were still there, we played softball against them. It was so good. They had a pitcher that, I don't know where he got a uniform, but he had a baseball uniform, and he pitched overhand. Boy, we slaughtered him, I'll tell you. When we were there, the 1st Cavalry and 11th Airborne were always competitive. And they had a football team, and a fellow from Jamestown, Beck, he played on that team.
For which side?
He played for the 11th Airborne.
11th Airborne, okay.
Well, anyhow, we got a sleeper train from northern Japan, clear to Tokyo, to go down and watch the New Year's Day football game between 11th Airborne and 1st Cavalry.
And
The only
there was a
trouble
guy-
with the sleepers, they were only about 5 foot long.
Oh, gosh. So this would have been a New Year's game in 1946.
He was in the Sports Hall of Fame. He was a great sports guy.
Here in Jamestown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had been one of my instructors in Benning. I ran into him one day uptown and had a nice visit with him, you know. That's a division patch.
Division patch. And the other one is...
Staff sergeant and my wings.
Oh, fantastic.
Talking about war and service, my dad's family, or my family, there was five of us in the service at the same time. They all came home. One of them got hit by shrapnel. But
This would have been your brother?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My oldest brother, long before the war started and everything, he went to Annapolis. And he was in, he flew off the early aircraft carriers, and he ended up a commander in the Navy. And the brother next to me volunteered for the Marines right after the war started. And he ended up, all during World War II, he was a dive bomber instructor and a sergeant, a pilot. But in the Korean War, he got to fly jets. He flew off aircraft carrier, and he flew 78 missions off of aircraft carriers bombing North Korea. He got the Air Medal and then another Silver Star after that. So he got his unjust due. He got home and died of cancer at 62.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. I believe in the Second Amendment.
Yep. Oh, well, look at that. Fantastic.
That's their number one weapon.
Absolutely.
Straight from Japan. They had shipped it to DeForest's father. And later on, DeForest's father said, "You should have it," so he give it to me. It was back in the time that I couldn't wait to go. You know, I had a chance to be deferred. I was working for a farmer. He wanted to get me a deferment. And I said, "No, I'm ready to go." I wanted to go. My end of tour duty was like a vacation, really.